January 13, 1996. A large convoy of military vehicles went to a secluded part of the forest near Varginha for no apparent reason. There, they frantically tried to clean up the remains of a mysterious metal aircraft that had crashed to the ground. A week later, mysterious animals were seen roaming the same forest, but they were quickly killed by the military and then secretly transported away from the city. No one saw what these mysterious animals looked like, and the military tried its best to keep it that way. But they failed when on that same day, 3 young girls saw a creature that looked like something out of a nightmare. And later on, the only word they could use to describe the creature was the devil. But when they talked about this devil to the government, the only thing they got was denial and being told to stop talking about the incident. This is the Varginha incident, an incident that lasted only a week but provided some of the best evidence we have about alien life on Earth. This is the bizarre true story of Brazil's most famous alien encounter and its subsequent cover-up. The story of Varginha's strange events begins not on the day of the infamous sighting itself, but a week earlier. It all started around 1 a.m. in the quiet outskirts of Varginha. Aurelina and Eurico de Freitas, a local farming couple, were just finishing up their nighttime routines when an unusual sound outside caught their attention. At first, it seemed like it was nothing. After all, when you're living on a farm, strange sounds are normal. But on that particular day, something was wrong. Their cattle started acting strangely, running around in the darkness, as if they were terrified by something invisible. Eventually, Aurelina decided to go check out what was making her livestock so jumpy, but when she opened the door and went outside, she saw something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Hovering just above the trees, she saw an enormous gray object silently gliding across the sky. The craft was surrounded by a mysterious haze or smoke which blended almost unnoticeably with the surroundings. She called her husband and they watched it pass by for about 40 minutes. According to them, the object maintained a very low altitude. It was also long, like the size of a bus, and covered everything in smoke. Then the object headed towards the Fernão Dias highway and then disappeared totally. That night, neither of them slept. In the days that followed, Aurelina and Eurico kept their story to themselves, afraid of being ridiculed for it. They were too shocked at the time when they saw the mysterious aircraft, so they just didn't even think to take any photos. More importantly, this was 2 decades ago, a time when cameras and taking photos were much less common, so they just remained silent. But around the same time, it turned out that the couple wasn't the only one seeing strange things. In fact, they were the first in a series of strange sightings that the entire town was experiencing. A local resident and pilot, Carlos de Souza, was on his way to a small aircraft demonstration near Minas Gerais on January 13th. There, he noticed something peculiar in the sky. Driving along the Fernão Dias highway in the morning light, Souza suddenly spotted what looked like an aircraft in distress. It was a large dark shape, seemingly struggling to maintain its altitude. Initially, thinking it might be a small plane or blimp in trouble, Souza's curiosity got the best of him, and he turned off the main highway onto a dirt road, hoping to get a closer look and, if necessary, offer assistance to whoever was inside the strange-looking plane. As Souza continued along the dirt path, he soon arrived at what he could only describe as a crash site. Debris lay scattered across the landscape, glittering slightly in the sunlight. The crash he saw was extremely strange, with grayish metal fragments, twisted and bent in ways that seemed impossible with typical aircraft materials. He summoned courage and touched and squeezed the light metal. The metal folded and expanded again. Souza's initial assumption that he'd find a downed blimp or helicopter quickly vanished. and it was clear that this aircraft was not human in nature. Not even a few minutes later, he noticed that he wasn't alone. Military personnel, dressed in full combat gear, were swarming the area and securing the wreckage with precision. Trucks and armored vehicles were parked haphazardly around the site, and police officers appeared to be directing traffic, ensuring no civilians ventured too close. Souza recalls feeling an instinctive sense of unease and a realization that whatever had crashed here was being closely guarded by the authorities. His suspicion was confirmed when a soldier approached him and ordered him to leave the area immediately. The incident left Souza very disturbed, and he would later recount his experience to Ubirajara Rodrigues, a famous UFOologist in Brazil. It's important to keep in mind here that the place where Souza saw the alien aircraft is in the exact same direction that the couple pointed out when they talked about their UFO sighting. While this was already shaping up to be a bizarre story, things were going to take a turn for the worse soon, just a week later. On the morning of January 20th, an alarming call reached the Varginha Fire Department. It came from residents in Jardim Andere, a small neighborhood on the city's outskirts, who reported the shocking discovery of a strange creature lurking in the wooded area. The caller was panicking as they described a being that was definitely not human. The firefighters braced for the unknown as they made their way to Jardim Andere. Most people who saw the creature panicked and ran away from it, so the firefighters really had no idea what they were going to find when they reached the location. But upon arrival, the firefighters quickly discovered that the situation was more intense than anyone had thought. Army personnel from the nearby Sergeant of Arms School, ESSA, in Tres Corocoes had already arrived, setting up a perimeter around the wooded area. The military presence was so swift and coordinated that it seemed almost like they had prior knowledge of the creature. The soldiers were armed and carrying various equipment to comb through the trees. Shortly after entering the woods, 2 gunshots were heard, followed by silence. Moments later, the soldiers came out carrying 2 large, opaque body bags. Strangely enough, according to some eyewitnesses, it looked like something inside one of the bags was moving, as if whatever was inside was still alive. The bags were soon loaded onto military trucks and driven off, vanishing to an unknown location. For the locals, this encounter was nothing short of surreal. The military's involvement raised a series of questions. Why were they so quick to respond? Why were they seemingly prepared for an encounter with whatever that was? And why were the soldiers involved in the first place? Couldn't the police handle things on their own? While the people in the area were left shocked at what happened, things were still not over yet, and on the other side of Varginha, another strange incident was taking place. It was 3 p.m. when 3 young girls, Katia Andrade Xavier, 22, and her sisters, Liliane and Valkyria Silva, aged 16 and 14, were walking home along an empty plot between the Jardim Andere and Santana neighborhoods. They had no idea that they were about to come face to face with something that would change not just the course of their lives, but the whole community. As the girls walked, they noticed a figure hunched near a wall in a grassy area. Thinking it might be an injured animal, they approached cautiously, but as they drew closer, they realized that it was something much worse. It was a creature unlike anything they'd ever seen. Before them was a small humanoid figure with dark, oily skin that glistened in the midday sun. Its large head was contorted and veiny, with deep red eyes that seemed to pierce straight into them. The creature appeared to be observing the girls out of curiosity and fear, and didn't make a single sound. The girls stopped in their tracks. They were paralyzed by shock and fear, and unable to understand what they were looking at. Its large, oval, glowing eyes stared at the girls for a few seconds before the girls panicked and ran screaming all the way back to their home. Once the girls arrived home, they breathlessly recounted it to their mother, who at first dismissed their story as a result of overactive imaginations. "Mom, I saw the devil," said Lillian. Her mom just replied with, "If he appeared to you, he will appear to me too." But by the time they returned, the creature was gone, but a faint, mysterious smell lingered in the air like ammonia, along with a slight impression on the ground where the creature had crouched. A bricklayer who was working near the land reportedly said that the firefighters had already taken away that strange animal. Afraid of staying, they left as quickly as they could. But the mysterious appearances of the day weren't over yet. Late in the afternoon of January 20th, a strong storm hit the city that most residents would never forget. In the middle of the rain, two plainclothes police officers were getting soaked while trying to close the window of their car, which was broken. The pair from the Military Police Intelligence Unit were on a mission around Jardim Andere. Once the storm passed, Officer Marco Eli Cherez and his partner decided to take a small break. Cherez returned home to change his wet clothes and to let his family know that it would be a long night and he might not make it back until much later. At around 8 p.m., the officers were driving along Benevenuto Braz Vieira Street, the same road where the three young girls had claimed to see the alien earlier that day. Suddenly, Cherez's partner hit the brakes abruptly, bringing their car to a halt. Something dark and strange had just darted across the road. Without hesitation, Cherez stepped out to investigate it, and he spotted the creature and instinctively attempted to catch it. In the heat of the moment, Cherez didn't realize that he lacked any protective equipment, and used his bare hands to capture what he could only describe as a small, unusual being. The officers loaded the creature into the back seat of their vehicle and quickly drove to a local health center. However, the center refused to admit the strange creature. Left with no other options, they headed to the Varginha Regional Hospital. There, it's believed that a section of the hospital was isolated specifically to treat this unusual animal. Unfortunately, Marco Eli Cherez, who had captured the creature, fell mysteriously ill not long after the encounter. Less than a month later, on February 15th, the 23-year-old officer passed away. According to accounts from local UFOologist Rodriguez, Cherez had undergone surgery to remove a small abscess shortly after the incident. Soon after, he developed a high fever and pain that spread throughout his body. Despite receiving care at 2 hospitals and being admitted to the intensive care unit or ICU at Bom Pastor Hospital, Cherez's condition continued to worsen until he eventually died from sepsis, a generalized infection with no clear cause. One of the doctors who attempted to save Cherez, cardiologist Cesario Lincoln Furtado, later recalled the baffling nature of his illness. "We tried everything," he said, "but nothing worked." The doctors gave him the 2 best antibiotics available at the time, but he didn't get better. It was like they were treating him with sugar water. Coming back to the mysterious creature that Cherez gave his life for, residents and employees say they saw a large movement of Army and Fire Department vehicles and patrol cars at the city's 2 hospitals, the Regional and Humanitas. The creature was reportedly transferred from one to the other, where a wing was also isolated for about 2 days until the creature was removed from the site. Hospital Regional de Varginha, the city's main medical facility, became the center of a rush of rumors after an alleged emergency brought in military personnel with a highly classified patient. Staff members, including doctors, nurses, and security guards, later reported seeing unfamiliar personnel, some in plain clothes and others in military uniforms, rushing in and out with equipment typically used for quarantine or biohazard situations. The secrecy and heightened security around this patient was extremely bizarre, to the point that many of the hospital's own staff didn't know what was going on. Later, it was also revealed that military trucks transported an unknown package from the hospital in the dead of night, leading many to suspect that this package contained the body of the creature from Jardim Andere. Though officials attempted to dismiss the reports, the consistency of witness testimonies and the secrecy surrounding the events only fueled the rumors. From Varginha, the beings were reportedly taken to the State University of Campinas, Unicamp, where they were also isolated in a section of the campus. The university never confirmed the story, but it's possible that the military was looking for a place to stash the strange creature, considering that the university was not the first place they asked. That honor belonged to the Varginha Zoo. Biologist Leila Cabral worked at the Varginha Zoo at the time and distinctly remembers the event of that day. She was at the club with her children for most of the day, but as soon as the thunderstorm passed, she decided to go to the zoo to see what had happened to her animals. When I arrived, Nelson, who was the doorman, said to me, "Miss Leila, the fire department came here with a very strange animal, and they said they would give it to you alone," she recalls. The firefighters had already left, and then Leila said, "Nelson, if it's something important, they'll come back." They did not return, and the next day, the whole city was already talking about the supposed appearance of something from another world. But for Leila, things were about to get much, much worse. From February to April of that year, some animals began to appear dead at the zoo. The animals started dying in a very strange way. They just died, and there was no plausible explanation for their deaths. After the deaths, she and the zoo veterinarian performed necropsies on the animals and sent samples for testing. A laboratory in Belo Horizonte, MG, detected an unidentified toxic caustic substance. But even at that, there was also no explanation for the animals' deaths. Veterinarian Marcos Mina, now director of the Varginha Zoo, confirms the information and adds that during the necropsy, blackening of the mucous membrane of the animals' stomachs and intestines was detected. Poisoning was considered, but as nothing was detected, this possibility was ruled out. According to him, species of deer, tapir, and ocelot died, and that was a perplexing problem. These animals had the same symptoms in the autopsy, but they were animals of different species and they fed in different ways. They were also kept in different places in the zoo. Also, there were no bacteria in the test, so this was making things complicated. We already know that Sherez, the police officer, died because of coming into contact with the strange creature. It's possible that the police or the firefighters brought the creature near the zoo, and some bacteria or other toxic substances were passed from the creature to the zoo animals, leading to all the deaths that happened later. However, since Leila was not at the zoo to take over the creature, it was transported to the university instead, and from there, the trail goes cold. Even after having all of this information and so many eyewitness accounts, there are still some major questions that remain. Just what did the 3 children see that day? Was there actually an alien creature that had crash-landed on Earth? Or was it just the overactive imaginations of an entire town? The first thing we need to look at here is the official explanation for the events. The Brazilian army and local authorities offered their own suspect for the so-called alien sighting. He was a local resident named Luiz Antonio de Paula, known around town as Mudinho or the Little Mute. Mudinho was a 30-year-old man with intellectual disabilities. He was a well-known figure in Varginha and had certain distinctive features such as a slightly larger than normal head and a particular way of crouching down low. He often crouched near walls or in muddy areas. On rainy days, his habit of collecting small objects, like cigarette butts or bits of trash, led him to sit or kneel in the mud, sometimes smearing it on himself and giving him an unusual earthy appearance. It wasn't uncommon for him to wander around in a daze. So when the news of a strange creature spread, some locals started wondering if what the three young girls saw wasn't an alien at all, but just Mudinho. This theory has a lot of weight to it since Mudinho's posture, behavior, and unique features could be easily seen as those of an alien in a moment of panic. The rainy weather on January 20th, 1996 could have also added to the eerie atmosphere, potentially making Mudinho's muddy appearance seem even stranger to the three young girls. For those skeptical of the alien hypothesis, this explanation makes sense, and they argue that in moments of intense fear, considering Mudinho's distinctive look and his habit of crouching low, it wasn't a stretch to think he could have been mistaken for a creature from another world. Moreover, studies show that eyewitness accounts often embellish or alter details after the fact, particularly when there's collective excitement or media influence involved. But when they were questioned, the girls seriously rejected the idea that Mudinho could have been the creature they saw. They insisted the figure was much more terrifying and otherworldly, with red eyes and distinctive horns on his head. Remember when one of the girls told her mom she saw the devil? Also, UFO enthusiasts were quick to point out that the Mudinho theory might be nothing but a convenient cover-up. They argued that calling the creature just Mudinho was a way for authorities to deflect attention and dismiss the girls' encounter as a misunderstanding. After all, why would the girls, who knew Mudinho and had seen him around town, suddenly mistake him for an alien? This brings us to the second theory, that the military was trying to downplay the incident and cover up the notion of extraterrestrial involvement altogether. Witnesses claimed the military operated with a level of coordination that suggested prior knowledge or training for such an event. They quickly cordoned off the area near Jardim Andere, where the creature was first seen by the young girls. They established a strict perimeter that prevented citizens from getting close. Soldiers dressed in full biohazard suits constantly patrolled the site, adding an ominous tone to the already strange situation. Local residents noted that these soldiers acted on high alert, almost as if they were trained to handle extraterrestrial incidents. But it didn't stop there. The military's operation extended beyond Jardim Andere. When the creature was allegedly transported to the hospital, military personnel took over security details there as well, setting up roadblocks and restricting access to certain hospital sections. In the days following these events, trucks bearing government plates were spotted transporting sealed containers and crates from various locations around Varginha. One truck was even seen near a wooded area, reportedly carrying the body of the creature that had been captured. The trucks were escorted by military vehicles and avoided main roads, traveling late at night or early in the morning to avoid drawing attention. Despite these precautions, the military's involvement did not go unnoticed. Civilians and reporters grew suspicious, and rumors began circulating about a potential cover-up. Official statements claimed these operations were standard security measures, though they offered no specific explanation for the biohazard gear. The military's vague response to the public's questions and the abnormal restrictions on information only strengthened the belief that the government was hiding something. But the biggest piece of evidence that we have of a cover-up is that months after the incident, the three girls came forward with new information. They reported that some men approached them at their home late one night, offering them money to retract their story. According to Lillian, these men arrived around 10 p.m. and offered them financial compensation in exchange for publicly claiming their sighting was a mistake. Allegedly, the offer was so generous that they were told they could leave Brazil if they accepted. The girls ultimately refused the offer and later went on television to expose the pressure they had been under to change their story. Lillian explained that after their televised statement, the threats and attempted bribes ceased, but their lives were forever changed. The three girls became local celebrities of sorts, drawing constant public curiosity and, at times, ridicule. Lillian even left school because of the unwanted attention she received, and the trauma of the incident would follow them for years. Another witness, Kaitia, was pregnant at the time of the incident, and she became the target of an unsettling rumor. Some said that her pregnancy could be tied to the creature. This followed an outlandish theory that she may have been carrying an alien child. This rumor only added to the stress and trauma Kaitia experienced, and even led her to separating from her husband. All of this shows that there was definitely something amiss that day. If it was truly nothing that happened, then there would be no one offering huge sums of money in exchange for the girls keeping quiet about what they say. But there are still a lot of skeptics who argue that no aliens ever visited Varginha. When it comes to Sherez, they mention that the official report talks about him getting an infection during the surgery that he underwent, which is what led to his death. Moreover, despite the story floating around of him touching the creature with his bare hands, the military has strongly defended the statement that he was not at all involved in the events of January 20th. The skeptics talk about how it's most likely that the only thing the girls saw that day was Mudinho, and because of the bad weather, they mistook him for an alien. The convoy of trucks was just a convoy of trucks, as the Brazilian government has mentioned time and again. The mysterious aircraft that crashed could just have been a government aircraft that crashed, and that would explain why the military was there cleaning up the mess. The skeptics argue that while the events of that day were strange, all of them can be explained using science, and it's highly unlikely that an alien was actually there in Varginha that day. But to be honest, even their reasons sound more outlandish than what the UFO enthusiasts believe. Whether you believe that the Varginha incident is proof of alien life, or if it's just a series of strange events, either way, one thing is certain: that day had a huge impact on the town of Varginha. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then you will certainly enjoy this one about the secret UFO base hiding in Antarctica. Spoiler alert, the government funded an operation to monitor the aliens. With Adolf Hitler on his last legs during the war, this secret base would be a safe haven for the Germans to recuperate and retaliate. But things didn't quite go as planned. Over several decades, quite a number of mysteries have been unexplored and unsolved on the continent of Antarctica. Some events have been scrapped from public records and hidden from public eyes. Well, not after this video. Let's investigate just what is being hidden on the surface of Antarctica.